his beast, which is the nickname for his massive 400-player draft preview, is available for everyone who has an Athletic subscription. That includes me. Dane Brugler is here on the Rich Eisen Show, NFL draft writer and expert for the Athletic. Good to see you, Dane. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Rich?
When do you start drilling in on prospects 400 deep like this? When does your process start?
It's a year-round process. I treat my job as if I were a scout, and really it goes back. I've already have information for next year's class that you inevitably pick up by watching film or talking to players, talking to coaches, talking to scouts. So it really is a year-round process. The summer is when you get that base of, okay, these are the guys we need to be watching. Then the season happens. Then the All-Star games, the Combine, and then March and pro days and team visits. And so it really is a year-round process of trying to compile all this information. They're all puzzle pieces, and that's what you're trying to collect, as many puzzle pieces as possible to give you the best and most clear picture of who these players are. And so I think, hopefully with this draft guide, there's over 2,000 players ranked in there with NFL verified testing information for each one, over 400 reports. So there's if you're a diehard, if you're just a casual fan, there's something in here for everybody.
Well, I'm definitely going to dive into it for sure, Dane. And so in your process of looking at players year round, give me the name of one player in your tenure of doing this that went from somewhat on the radar screen to exploding and winding up being a top 5, if not top overall pick in the draft. You got one for me?
Well, let's use this year with Jayden Daniels, right? Jayden Daniels was a player that you go back to Arizona State, and he had that really good freshman year. Came in, he helped make Brandon Ayuk a first-round pick. That's how long Jayden Daniels has been playing college football. But then things kind of went south for the Sun Devils and for Jayden Daniels. He transfers to LSU, had a really good 2022 season. But even, looking at him over the summer, you thought maybe third round, maybe fourth round, a good player. But then what he did this past year for LSU, did he have a great offensive line? Yes. Did he have all-stars at receiver? No doubt about it. But you can't take away what he was able to do in terms of creating big plays. And that's something I think translates to the next level. Nobody had more plays of 20-plus yards than Jayden Daniels. He had 90 this year. And we only have the data going back 5-6 years, but I'd be shocked if that's not a record. To put that in perspective, Joe Burrow, in his great final year at LSU, he had 87 plays of 20-plus yards, and he did that in 15 games. Jayden Daniels had 90 in only 12 games. So his ability to create the big play with his arm and his legs is the reason we're talking about him as a strong possibility of maybe being that number 2 pick to the Commanders.
So that was going to be my next question, is despite Caleb Williams and the hype, hoopla, and things of that nature, and having seen what his Heisman Trophy season was 2 years ago, in him not having the line and receivers like Jayden Daniels was blessed to have at LSU in his Heisman Trophy winning season of this year. Do you think there is a question of what the Bears should do at the top or not?
No, I think this is a Caleb Williams draft. I think there were times during the season when you watch Drake May, you watch Jayden Daniels, and then maybe Caleb's having a tough game against Notre Dame. There are times where you keep an open mind. But at the end of the day, Caleb has all the tools. And physically speaking, he has the arm strength, he has the mobility. But there are two things with Caleb that stands out the most. First, it's his rare football awareness. It's different. It's his pocket mobility. It's his ability to create when things fall apart. So that rare football awareness is number one. And then number two is he's always in a ready to throw position. It doesn't matter what is needed from his body. He has the base. He has the torque through his hips. He has the body balance. It's really unique to watch. And you think about like a guy like Matthew Stafford. He has that, but he has this huge arm. So it doesn't matter how awkward of a position he's in, he can make the throw. Patrick Mahomes has it too. It doesn't have quite the arm strength, but he has the natural body balance where he's able to make these throws from a non-set position. Caleb Williams is kind of in the middle of that, where he has a really strong arm, not quite Stafford, but a really strong arm. And then he also has that body balance where he can make these throws that a lot of other quarterbacks cannot make. So is Caleb a perfect prospect? By no means am I saying that. He needs to clean up the fumbles, needs to be a little more consistent working from inside the pocket with his initial reads. but you take all of the skills that he has put on tape the last 3 years, and you're willing to bet on that translating well to the next level.
Do you agree with the decision the Bears made then to trade Justin Fields out and go for Caleb?
No doubt. I don't think they had much of a decision. I think in terms of just resetting the quarterback clock, because it was as much of an economic decision as it was a football decision. You're resetting that quarterback clock. Obviously, especially when you have players in the locker room really voicing their opinion about what should happen, that's a fine line to walk. You have to make sure you don't lose that locker room.
Mm-hmm.
But in Ryan Poles, he didn't draft Justin Fields, obviously. This is his chance to draft his quarterback. And, you don't pass on a guy like Caleb Williams. I think he's going to go down as the quarterback that gets talked about. Okay, if we have to rank the top quarterback prospects the last 10 years, Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, Caleb Williams, he's right there in that mix in terms of just the most skills, the most talent, the best traits. And so obviously time will tell if it works out, but I think the Bears honestly didn't have much of a choice to make. This was the right way to go.
Dane Brugler, NFL draft writer for The Athletic, and check out his draft preview and the number of prospects that are drilled down on are very impressive, to say the least, right here on the Rich Eisen Show. So walk me through what the quarterback evaluation is after Caleb, in your estimation.
For me, Drake May from North Carolina is the number 2 quarterback. I think he's cut from the same cloth as Justin Herbert, 6'3" or 6'4.5", really good athlete. There's still some things he's figuring out. There's no doubt about it. And when his arm gets a little juiced up, he can miss some throws, especially easy throws, slants, digs, some more simple throws. But his combination of athletic skills and arm talent and mental toughness really stands out. And he comes from a family where I'm a big believer in the older brother theory. If you have older brothers, you are just you were raised a little bit differently because you're always trying to keep up. Yeah. And you look at Drake May, he had 3 older brothers, were all college athletes, baseball, basketball. And so he, growing up playing all these sports, he was playing up a level. He was trying to keep up with his older brothers, and that helped develop his competitiveness and his toughness. I think he's wired the right way. I think the physical skill set is there. It's just about consistency. And so I'm sure there will be, like for most rookie quarterbacks, there will be ups and downs. And a big part of this equation is where they go. The support system they get, with Caleb going to the Bears, you can make an argument that's the best situation for a number 1 overall pick at quarterback that maybe we've ever seen. But what happens, with the Commanders at 2, the Patriots at 3? You look at the Patriots, their wide receiver group is it's lacking. It's not an impressive depth chart there. The offensive line has some holes. So if, say, Jayden Daniels goes 2, Drake May goes 3, that's a little bit of a tougher situation for May. And so where these guys end up is as much of a conversation point with these guys' development as anything. We kind of talked about Jayden Daniels. J.J. McCarthy, I think, belongs in this conversation as well. It'll be really interesting if we see quarterbacks 1, 2, 3, 4. We've never seen that before. We could see quarterbacks at least in the top 6. But with JJ, and I know fans hate to hear about win-loss record for quarterbacks, but NFL teams talk about it. They care about it. So it's relevant. And with JJ, 36-2 in high school, including a state championship, 27-1, including a national championship in college. So that's the type of pedigree that you're looking for. And yeah, there's no doubt you wish there was more of a body of work for JJ as a passer, but when he was called upon, he made plays. You look at what he did on money downs. On this past year, 48.1% of his throws on 3rd or 4th down resulted in a first down. Not just were completed, they resulted in a first down. That's number 1 by far among all these quarterbacks in this class. So when you think about the tools that he offers, you like him now, but you're excited about where he's going to be. But then also factor in the intangibles, the mental toughness. That's what wins coaches over. And so it's not going to be a surprise when we see J.J. McCarthy's name come off the board somewhere in those first 6 picks.
Dane Brugler here on the Rich Eisen Show. So you're just saying on paper or just from your evaluation, for lack of a better phrase, it's May, then Daniels, then J.J. McCarthy. That's your, if you will, pecking order after Caleb in your evaluation?
For me, that's how I see it. But it is interesting when you talk to teams. It's different. I think one of the biggest misnomers in draft talk is the word consensus. The word consensus isn't really a thing because you go team to team and everyone has their different opinions on these guys. And even going back to a couple of years ago, some teams had Zach Wilson as the number one quarterback in that draft. And so it's different for every team based off of what they're looking for. Some teams are looking for someone that's more pro ready to go from day one. Other teams see the vision and can wait a little bit longer. And especially with a guy like J.J. McCarthy, who needs a little bit more projection, teams are split on just what his projection would be. So for me, it's Caleb, then Drake, then Jayden Daniels, then J.J. McCarthy. But definitely is a split opinion among these quarterbacks from team to team.
Then a mutual friend of ours, Albert Breer, was on this program, Dane, a couple of days ago, and he said there's a split on Michael Penix where many scouts are kind of down on him. Coaches love him, and he calls that the Penix conundrum right now. What is your evaluation of Michael Penix Jr., Dane?
I'm kind of split because I understand where the scouts are coming from. There's a lot about what Penix does that it worries you for the transition to the next level. And I think that the game against Michigan in national title game really showed it. Michigan is the closest thing that Michael Penix has seen to an NFL defense. And he looked like he wasn't ready for that stage. Against Texas, a more vanilla defense, he knew what was coming and he picked them apart. Against Michigan, where they really mixed up their looks and made him think and gave him happy feet and his eyes were all over the place. That's what he's going to face every single Sunday, and that's just tough. So there are several parts of his game that are inconsistent, his mechanics, his anticipation, his reaction to pressure. But I think where coaches really love Penix is the arm confidence. There is not a place on the field he is scared to throw. He will stretch it horizontally, vertically with his arm. And then the mental toughness. You think about what he has overcome over the years, the 4 season-ending injuries. Nobody wanted him out of Indiana. Washington was his only Power 5 offer to transfer after he left Indiana and entered the transfer portal. So he has overcome a lot. And you think about what he's done the last 2 years at Washington, and it won't be a surprise. I don't think Michael Penix is going to go in the top half of round 1. But if we see a team, say the Raiders, trade back up into round 1 to get a Michael Penix, I don't think that'd be too surprising.
Where does Bo Nix wind up, do you think?
Yeah, I think he's somewhere in that early second-round mix, kind of with Penix. He's obviously on paper has everything you want. I mean, he set the completion percentage record. I think that Oregon offense did such a great job of putting him in position to succeed. So he knew where to go with the ball. There was a lot of dump offs, a lot of screens. I think that really pushed up that completion percentage. I do think that once NFL pressure and the walls close in, that's where I think things fall apart a little bit. So if you're going to draft Bo Nix in the first round, top 25, you're saying that you think he's going to be a top 15 quarterback at some point during his rookie contract. And I just have a hard time seeing him go to that level. And so to me, he's more of a middle of the road NFL starter. But for a lot of teams, that's an upgrade. And so, if the Patriots end up passing on a quarterback at 3, maybe we see them go with the Bo Nix route. We could see a team like the Rams, maybe if they're worried about Matthew Stafford beyond this year. The Broncos are really interesting. What do they do with the 12th pick? And if they don't go quarterback early, they don't have a second-round pick, the Sean Payton trade. So do they look to trade up with that third-round pick? Do they look into next year's draft capital to move around? And one thing that's a point that's multiple teams have brought up to me, looking forward, because teams always forward scout, especially a quarterback. Next year's quarterback class, there's not a lot to get excited about, at least at this point. Who knows? Maybe there'll be a Jayden Daniels who surprises us and comes out of nowhere.
Or a Burrow, right?
Semi-nowhere.
Or a Burrow,
Joe Burrow,
right?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like,
right.
That's a perfect example of, like, maybe, how tenuous it is or dangerous it is to look over the steering and go, there's nobody that great coming down the pike, so we should go maybe push somebody up here in this year. And so I guess that's one of my final questions for you, Dane, is Patriots perfect example. Giants, they're at 6. They have some options. Do they move up? Do they stay put? Do they not take a quarterback because they have said publicly they believe Daniel Jones is going to come back and is still, a more than successful starter in the NFL. So my question for you is, let's just use New England as an example, and you got Nix and Penix that's out there potentially to be traded up for in the back half of the first round. Is Marvin Harrison that good that you go and take the kid, Marvin Harrison Jr., third, or move around and take him there and forego Drake May or Jayden Daniels to take him and then go and get Nix and Penix because you like them that much? Would you counsel that or no?
You consider it, but at the end of the day, the number one priority has to be, let's get the quarterback right. And I think the Patriots are a great example, because you look at the situation with Robert Kraft. He's, I think, 84 maybe. He just watched an offense last year where it was a train wreck. And I don't think he's ready to go through that again. He doesn't want to go through a so-so offensive season just to get the wide receiver. He wants that injection of life. He wants that quarterback. Now you have Elliott Wolf, who's 40 years younger, and I think he'd be more open to a trade back situation or a Marvin Harrison Jr. As opposed to taking the quarterback, because he sees maybe more of the long term. But drafting a quarterback in the first round, especially the top 10, that is an ownership pick. And that is a big part of this conversation, is the ownership has to be, and the Giants are a great example of that. We know that we know they like Daniel Jones. And at the end of the day, if they don't draft a quarterback, the Giants, with that sixth pick, you can pretty much bet that came from ownership. They want to see Daniel Jones out there. They're not ready to throw in the towel on him yet. So with all these teams, we have to remember that the ownership plays a big part in who ultimately each of these teams drafts in the top 10.
Yeah, Robert Kraft, 82, just to throw that out there.
There you
But
go.
but I totally get your point. Before I let you go, Dane, the prospect you love. You're just like, I'll pound the table for this guy. Not enough people talking about him. You know what I'm talking about with you right here. Lay that one out for me. Who is that?
I'll go with Malik Washington, receiver from Virginia, who, look, nobody should be compared to Steve Smith. But ultimately, every year, we've got a guy that gets compared to Steve Smith, right? So the guy that shouldn't be compared to Steve Smith, but if we have to do it, it would be Malik Washington, Virginia. He's a smaller guy, but he makes plays. The way he can adjust to the football and get open and then create those explosive plays. That's the guy, late third, early fourth. I don't think he's going to go too much higher, but that's a guy I think could see making a pretty instant impact. On defense, Andrew Phillips from Kentucky, a corner who doesn't get enough love, undersized, but he is a really good player. I think he's another guy that should be at least a second or third round pick that doesn't get the respect he deserves.
Well, I mean, you mentioned Washington there. I mean, it just shows you how deep this draft truly is at wide receiver. And I know we say it a lot. It seems like we're saying it every year. This just feels that way. Having, personally eyeballed them at the combine, they were just all eye-popping, and they were all big, and many really big and physical wide receivers also. And maybe that's why you're seeing the Bills just say via con Dios to Diggs in part, and Gabe Davis. You saw the Chargers let their top two wide receivers out, one by trade, one by just letting walk. Mike Williams, I know he's coming back from an ACL. I'm just wondering if we're truly seeing the league evaluate the wide receiver position in this draft appropriately, Dane.
Yeah, I'm convinced that the rest of our lives, wide receiver is going to be a strength. If you're not a quarterback, you're going to go to wide receiver. If you're a young kid growing up, because you want the ball in your hands, and that's what the NFL has become, is a wide receiver league. And so last year was a strength. The year before it was a strength. This year, Marvin Harrison Jr. at the top, but Malik Neighbors. Some teams have him as wide receiver one. And
do you?
I mean, he's close. In last year's, if Malik Neighbors were in last year's draft or the year before, he would have been my number one overall player in the entire draft. He is that type of talent. He just happens to be in a class this year with Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. So he's number 3 for me, but he has the talent. And he's just 20 years old. He doesn't even turn 21 until July, his first training camp. And he led the SEC in catches each of the last 2 years. And you look at the traits, you look at the production. The simplest way to put it with Malik Neighbors, he doesn't have a limitation. There is not a single limitation to his game. So all these receivers are easy to get excited about. Roma Dunze in that conversation as well. And then to your point, this is a position that stretches second round, third round, fourth round. A lot of really good wide receiver talent in this class. But I think they're going to go. I mean, in the first 2 rounds, we could see 14, 15 receivers.
Wow.
So it is a case of you can wait on your receiver, but they're going to go fast. So I think we're going to see a lot of teams go that direction first, second round.
Dane, thanks for the time. Everybody get an Athletic subscription because you get his NFL draft guide with that subscription. Thanks for the time, Dane. Really appreciate it.
Anytime. Thanks, Rich.
You got it. That's Dane Brugler right here on The Rich Eisen Show. Excellent maiden voyage, to say the least. Catch The Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.